Hello everyone and welcome back to another StudyMonster Python programming video aimed at those studying GCSE Computer Science. Have you ever typed something into Python and thought, damn, that looks messy? Well, today we're going to teach Python how to tidy up our strings. We're going to shout in uppercase, whisper in lowercase and get Python to capitalise our words, count letters and clean up accidentally entered blank spaces, and even slice things up like digital pizza, all without using any ifs or loops. Welcome to StudyMonster Python Episode 3, String Manipulation. Let's quickly recap Episode 1, where we looked at the print function, which allows us to give our programs a voice, and comments which help us record our thinking and explain code. If you missed this episode, be sure to check out the Python programming playlist or click on the video on screen now. Recap of episode 1. So back in episode 1 we looked at the print function. The print function allows us to let our program speak to us. So in this instance here we're just printing out a very straightforward string value, and you can see that by the quotation marks at the beginning and end stating hello world. Every function in Python has an open and close bracket, and inside of them brackets is where we would put our arguments. So in this, the print function itself would just print out a string statement. We also looked at comments using the hashtag. So line 1 contains a comment saying episode 1 recap. Comments don't have to be on lines of code on their own, like we've got on line 1 and line 3. Comments can also come at the end of code. So once it gets to the end of this line of code here, this print function, it's going to ignore this comment. Comments are incredibly good for writing down what we've done in our code, so when we come back to it at a later time we understand what's going on. So if we run this program now, we should just get a straightforward string value of hello world printed in the console. Right, and finally let's quickly recap episode 2, where we looked at variables and how to assign values to them, such as strings and integers. We also looked at how to join strings together using concatenation with the plus operator and the comma. Again, if you missed this episode, please be sure to check out the Python programming playlist or click on the video on screen now. Okay, so how exactly do we manipulate strings in Python? Well, first off, let's look at what we already know. So we can print string values by using the quotation marks. So if we type in hello monsters and run that code, we will get an output of hello monsters. Now there is another way of printing out a string value without using quotes. We can use the apostrophe, so singles, so like that. Now there's no right way, there's no you should use this, you should use the other, and they will both achieve the same thing. So if we run that again, we've got an output there exactly the same. There's no difference between the two. Problems that you will run into, as an example, if you use the apostrophes, the singles, you might come across a situation where you were writing a sentence. So hello monsters, I really hope you're enjoying. So you can see there as I'm typing that, we've come across an issue here because we've started with the single, the apostrophe, but we're also using one inside of a word that we're typing in our string value. So it thinks that is the end of that string value, which is going to cause issues. And you can see already there that we're getting the red line. So it's going to come up with a syntax error, and I'm going to show you a syntax error right now. So another reason why you may get an error with starting with one and ending with one. So if we started with a quote and we typed in hello monsters, but in this end, when we got to the end of our string value, we closed it with a single, an apostrophe, we've got this massive red line again, which is going to start setting off alarm bells. But if we run it, we will see down the bottom here that we've got a syntax error. Now a syntax error is probably one of the errors that you're going to come across tons when you start programming. It basically means that you've broken the grammatical rules of the programming language. Just like if you were writing a sentence out in English and you didn't start it with a capital letter, or you didn't end it with a full stop, we've broken the grammatical rules of the English language, written language. In this instance, a syntax error is saying, look, I don't understand what you've done here. You've broken the rules of the language, for want of a better word. So we need to fix that, and we can fix that just by making sure we are consistent with our string opening and closed value. So in this instance, I would suggest you stick with the quotations. So we run this code here, and we will get our 3 hello monster statements printed out. Okay, next up we're going to be looking at variables and printing, just very, very quickly, just so we can get this into our heads when we print out variables and when we print out literal strings. Some students do get mixed up with this, so I just want to recap this before we move on further. So if we were to do something like name, so we're creating a variable called name, and we're going to put Marley in there. Now, if I was to print, I could print out Marley. That is going to print out the string literal Marley. If I was to do print name, that is going to print out the contents of the variable name, which in this case contains the string literal Marley. So if I run that program, we've got our Marley and our Marley. So they're doing the same thing, but it's different ways of printing out. But you've just got to remember that this is not the variable. This is the variable. This is a literal string. Similarly, if we were to print out, and this is where some students do get confused, if we were to print out the 38, I'll say 44, or we'll go with the 67. If we were to print out 67, and then we run this code, what you need to get into your head is that this 67 is not the number 67. Because we've put this into quotes, we've printed the string literal 67. These are the character 6 and the character 7, and we know this because if we were to do something like plus 2, it's not going to be able to add this integer to this number, because Python doesn't see it as a number, it sees it as a literal string. So it sees it as the character 6 followed by the character 7, and then we are saying, right, can you add a value of 2 to it? And it's going to come up with an error because it can't add 2 to a string. So we'll see what happens here, and we're going to get a type error. So it's saying here that it can't concatenate a string value with an integer value. So you need to get into your head when you see these, the green, the quotation marks, this is not the number 67, it is the character 6 followed by the character 7. Right, so let's get rid of all of this. So next up, we're going to be looking at methods. So methods are what allow us to manipulate these string values. So if I was to do something along the lines of name equals, and I'm just going to put a random string in here, so we'll put hello monsters, my name is Marley. Right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change that to a lowercase m, and I'm going to put load of spaces at the end, and I'm going to put a load of spaces at the beginning as well. So if we were to print name out, in fact name's not particularly great. Remember back to episode 2 when we talked about variables, name having something like this inside of that variable is not a particularly great descriptive variable name, so we're going to call that message for want of a better variable name of what it contains. So if we print this out, if we run this, you can see here it's printed out all of our spaces, hello monsters, my name is Marley with a lowercase m, and then spaces at the end. So it's printed everything out we told it to, right? So now we're going to be using something called methods to kind of manipulate the way that this looks. Now methods, in order to access methods, we use a full stop. Now it's a full stop that allows us to access a library of methods that apply to a function. So if we were to do something like message full stop, and as soon as we do that full stop, we get a list, we get all of these things. Now in the IDE that I'm using, it will pop up and it will give me a library of methods that I can use. The IDE you use might not do it like that, so it's something that you might have to look at depending on what sort of IDE you're using. So the first one I'm going to be looking at is upper. So just like functions, our methods need open and close brackets, our parentheses, in order. Remember what we said, is it's this part, these parentheses, these open and close brackets, that actually run the code. So this upper value, if we were to put, is gonna basically make whatever's inside of this message all uppercase. Now if I run this, nothing's gonna happen. So I'll run it first and we'll see what happens. So it's run the code, everything's fine, but nothing's come out here. It's trying to convert, it's basically converted all this to uppercase, but we haven't told, like we've got here, we've printed the message, we haven't told Python that we want to actually print it out, we want to actually see it. So we're going to do that here, we're going to print, open our bracket there, and we're going to close it at the end there. So we've got an open and close parenthesis, curly brackets inside of our print statement. So if we run it again, and we will see down the bottom here, we've still got all of our spaces, but we've got hello monsters, my name is Marley, but it's all in uppercase. So just going to put a little quote, a little comment in here. So convert contents of variable to uppercase. So comments, like I said before, make sure you're using them, because when you come back to them, it's always good to look at what you were doing before. Now lowercase, so it's already telling me, my IDE is already trying to help me, so we're going to do lower now. So lower, just like upper is converted to uppercase, lowercase is going to convert it to lowercase. So we'll see this in action very quickly. Converts contents of variable to lowercase. So we'll run it and we'll see this in action. So we can see down the bottom in our console that everything, all of the letters, all the characters have been converted to lowercase. Now you can probably already start to see that when you were creating programs, using upper and lowercase is going to be valuable. So if you are taking input from a user and you want to make sure users are the, right, for want of describing this better, the weakest part of any system is going to be your end user. So an end user, you can't trust them to type in something the way that you want them to type it in. So converting user input into uppercase or to lowercase will allow you to manage your programs a lot more efficiently. So another one that we're going to look at, let's do capital, we're going to capitalize everything now. So if we do print message dot title, and we open and close our parentheses, and we'll run it and we'll just see what happens down below. So if we run that code now, we can see that every word has been capitalized. It's acting as a title, so it's put a capital letter at the beginning of every one of our words, which is brilliant. So something else that we could do, so we're manipulating strings. So there's lots of different methods that we can use to manipulate strings. So capitalizes the first letter in each word. Right, so two more, well actually three more little string manipulation techniques we're going to look at before we move on to slicing. So first up, we're going to look at count. So we're going to look at the method count. So to do this, we're going to do our print again. We're going to print our variable message, and we're going to use the count method. So this one will allow us to count. We could count words, so we could say, right, count how many times a combination of characters appear, like LL. So in this instance, it should return 1 because we've got one LL there, and we've only got one L here. So we'll try this, see what happens. So we'll run that, and we're going to get the value 1. So if I was, and just to make sure that you were aware of this, capitalization counts in this one. So if I was to count a lowercase m and press play, so we're running our code, we've got the value 3 back. So if we count our m's, we've got 1 m here, 2 m's, 3 m's, and then our 4th m. So we've actually got 4, but we've only got 3 lowercase m's. We've got 1 capital, and just to check that capitalization counts, if we put a capital M in there and run the code, we've got a 1. So we know that we can count single characters, or we could count combinations of characters if this was to be of use in a program. So the final one that we're going to look at is stripping out of our string values all of these nasty little spaces that we've put in at the beginning, and we've also been putting in at the end. So you might think, and we can have a look at the library of methods available to us. So if we have a look down these, we've got count, lower, we've got title, we've got a whole host of things, but we're looking for something called strip. So I'll just type S in. So we've got split, strip, swap case. In this instance, we're going to use strip. So if we type stripping, not split, stripping, and run this code, what it's going to look for is all of the white space, the blank spaces, the spaces that we've got in our variable, and it's just going to get rid of them for us. So if we run that code, and we will see here we've got that 1 because we're counting our capital M's. But down here, you'll notice that we've got a different output to what we had originally. So in these first 3 that we were printing, we had all these spaces at the beginning, all these spaces at the end. In our new one, we've got none at the beginning and none at the end. So a really useful method for getting rid of accidental spaces. A lot of people, when they're typing inputs into a program, just out of automatic sort of instinct, when they're finished typing their name, they'll put a space at the end of it. So this is one method of getting rid of them unwanted spaces. So that and we need to do that because a space in terms of a space bar character takes up space in our program. It is a character itself, a space. So we need to be wary of that. Right, before we move on to our slicing of strings, we're going to look at something called the length function. So I'm just going to get rid of a couple of these so we've got some space. So the length function is a function in itself, so it's not one of these methods. We can't call it by using the full stop. We use it in a slightly different way. So the length function is going to return how many characters are in a string value. So if we were to print and we use the len, so this is going to go purple because it's a function on its own, and we open them brackets and put our message in, so our variable message. If we run this code, it's going to use the print function. Inside of that print function, we're running the length function, and we are passing in the argument of we're passing in our variable into the length function, and we're going to print the results out. So if we run this code now and see what happens, we've got the number 46. Now 46, because if we were to look at our string value, if we count them, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. Space is a value because we've got all of these as well. So it's counting 46. So we could, before we do this, print. In fact, this is going to show you what happens here. So if we print message dot strip again, not split, and we run it, we should still get this same value, and I'm going to explain why. So if we run it, we're still going to get 46, even though we've took out of these spaces before and after, and that's because all we're doing here is we're just printing out, we're stripping them spaces out, and then we're just printing it to the screen. We're not actually putting the value back into this variable. So the variable message never changes. It always contains this, because we haven't assigned the results of our strip back in to our variable message. Okay, so how would we do that then? So if we take a look here, instead of printing message.strip, we could call our variable message and then use the assignment operator and assign it back the message followed by the strip method. So we're saying here, take whatever's inside of message and use the strip method to take all of the blank space out of the variable, and then assign the results of that back into message. So now if we run this code, this will have changed, so we should get a different number to 46 that we got previously. So if we run that code now we've got 34. So when we originally counted this, and we counted 34 characters, because these values, these spaces do count, we've got 34. Right, so let's try something a little bit more advanced but a lot more fun. So in Python we can slice strings. So what you can see here on the screen, we've got a variable called word, and we've assigned it the value StudyMonster, and we can tell it's a string because it's enclosed by speech marks. Now in computing, computers start counting at 0, not at 1 like humans do. So this S, this character S, the capital S inside of our string, has the index position of 0. The lowercase t has an index position of 1, and then every character following on from that goes up increments by 1. So you can see here we've got the characters wrote out in a comment here, StudyMonster, and we've got the index positions underneath them. Now Python allows you to access one character or multiple characters by using the slicing technique, right? So let's create a temporary variable. So we're going to call it part word, and we're going to pass into this variable our word value, which stores StudyMonster, and then to access the slicing we need square brackets. So every character has an index value. So the first argument we can put inside of our slice is the starting position. So if I was to start at index position 0 and then use a colon and say I want an ending index value now. So if I was to do, for example, 4, you would expect it to bring back STUDY. However, what you've got to be careful of, and there's a warning here, Python will give us the start index up to, but not including the end index value. So just to show you what happens there, if I was to do the 4, pass it onto index 4, and then print part word out and see what happens. So we've got the word stud, STUD. So we haven't printed out that Y value, even though we've included that index value there. So be very careful when you are slicing strings that you go one step further, and you need to include the index position following on from the one you need. So if we increase that to 5 and then run it, we will have the full word study. So we don't need to start at index position 0. So if I wanted to bring out the monster, I could start at index position 5 and then go up to, not 11, because if I do 11, it's going to only come back with the E, up to the E. So I'm going to extend that once more to 12 and then run that, and we should have monster. And again, it doesn't have to be, you can have any combination. So if I just wanted the capital N, we could do 5 and 6, and that will bring back just this M, capital M character. So slicing is particularly useful when you want to cut certain elements out of strings. So in exam papers that I've seen, they may ask you to, a common question might be asking you to create some sort of username or to create some sort of password for a user in a system, which might be a combination of someone's first name, the last name, and then the day they started, or the day they were the year they were born, or something along them lines. So just have a practice of this. Really useful, really fun to use. Have a play about with this technique and see what you can come up with. And that's it for string manipulation. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to check out the challenges in the description below. Please like, subscribe and share for more videos, and I'll see you in the next one.